afternoon and welcome to this Tuesday, November 17th edition of Westman Newsline. I'm Charles Tweed alongside Rebecca Winjack and Jessica Glasgow. On today's show, we'll have stories about the safety of the new bridge, a local business's H1N1 plan, and a new credit card policy at BU. And Rebecca will be in with sports. Rebecca, a big 5-game homestand came to an end for the Wheaties this weekend.
Yeah, that's right, Charles. A showdown with the first-place Saskatoon Blades on Friday, followed by a Sunday game against rival Regina, yielded only 2 points against the Wheaties for the weekend. I'll have that later on in sports.
Thanks, Rebecca. And Jessica will be in with weather. Jess, I can't remember a November this nice in my lifetime, and goodness knows I've been around for a long time. Is it the warm weather actually going to stick around?
Well, Charles, it actually looks like it will, at least for the next little while. This week's outlook is still well above that 0 mark. Currently in Brandon, it's sunny and beautiful, 11 degrees outside with winds coming out of the southwest at 15 kilometers an hour. I'll have all your weather details coming up later in the show.
Thanks, Jess. Well, a fatal crash last month on the 18th Street Bridge has the family of a late victim voicing concerns over its safety. The early snowstorm on Thanksgiving weekend caused a truck to spin out of control on the bridge, and it crashed into a vehicle driven by 81-year-old Colin Campbell, who later died in hospital from the injuries he sustained. Herb Mahood, Regional Director with Manitoba Infrastructure and Transportation, says the bridge was given the standard safety treatments to handle year-round travel. A brush technique was used to give the bridge a coarse texture as a way of preventing slippery conditions. However, witnesses say that the bridge was so slippery that emergency responders had difficulty standing up. Well, the H1N1 pandemic has much of the population concerned and vaccine clinics expanding their priority lists. What sort of contingency plans, if any, do local businesses have to ensure they're not affected by a potential roster of sick employees? Westman Newsline has more in this report. The H1N1 flu pandemic has effectively changed how we live our daily lives, and new evidence suggests it's also changing the way we do business. The Brandon Chamber of Commerce brought Mike Kuma, the Vice President for Labor Relations of Legacy Bowls Group, to town to address some of the concerns businesses will face due to the virus.
I think it's extremely important. Recent surveys are saying about 87% of employers, small employers and mids, don't have a pandemic plan in place.
Kuma believes the benefits of companies being prepared and having a policy in place not only helps the employer, but the employees as well.
What better way to communicate with your workforce than to have a plan in place that addresses their issues, addresses their concerns, and then involves them in the preparation of it.
For more information about how to protect your company and employees, visit businessflupan.ca. One of the most popular pavilions. Hopefully the need for widespread policy change will subside as more and more of the population is immunized. Unfortunately, it may be a while yet before that happens. Winnipeg health officials had to throw out about 1,000 doses of the swine flu vaccine because the staff goofed when they stored it. The city's health authority says during the first week of mass immunizations, the batch was stored in a freezer at a community office instead of a fridge. But the authority says very little has been wasted since then. While some of Canada's bigger health districts say they've thrown out about 1% of the total vaccine they've administered because of the dosage's 24-hour shelf life. The president of the Manitoba Government and General Employees Union plans to fight a decision to close most of the facilities run by the Addictions Foundation of Manitoba over the Christmas holidays. Peter Olfert says 280 members who work for the agency have been told they must take either unpaid holidays, vacation days, or use blank time during the closure. He says it is unfair that workers have to take an economic hit, and the government should provide the funding so rehab services are available to Manitobans 365 days a year. And one of the most popular pavilions will be absent from next year's Lieutenant Governor's Winter Festival. Organizers of the German pavilion say they simply could not find a venue that could keep up with the popularity, since their traditional home at the Eastport Hall is now only able to rent out a portion of the space they require. The only other venue that they might have worked out was the Keystone Center, and that's not possible due to the Keystone's contract with alcohol and beer suppliers. Joining the German community in sitting out next year's festivities is the Icelandic Pavilion. However, 3 other ethnic groups have stepped up to fill the void. Brandon's Colombian, Ethiopian, and Mexican communities all plan to stage pavilions next year. And with that mix of good and bad news, let's take a look at which type the money markets are currently offering.
For all your local news, weather, and sports coverage, watch Westman Newsline. Broadcasting from Assiniboine Community College on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 1 o'clock.
Starting in December, Brandon University is going to be instituting a major policy change. Westman Newsline's Krista Taryn has all the details in this report.
It's announced they will no longer be accepting credit cards as payment for tuition or housing as of December 1st because the money they were being charged was way too much.
In the last year, we saw a 28% increase in the cost. So for a university like Brandon University, it's about $145,000 cost annually, which, if you want to put it into other terms, is about the equivalent of hiring 2 professors.
Although that is a fairly sizable sum, most students still wish for another option.
I kind of understand where the university is coming from, looking at the $145,000 charge that was, BU was held responsible for. I still think that they should accept credit cards. Some students pay their whole tuition with credit cards, and I think it should still stand that they're allowed to use credit cards.
It seems the full details aren't widely known. However, Scott Lamont explains.
So what we've done is set up pay-at-bank systems so that for people like myself who pay for my hydro bill or pay for the tuition for my kids, I pay for it online. And so we've got arrangements set up with all the major banks, with many of the credit unions and so on, so that you can still pay from home, you can still pay electronically, you can still pay 24 hours a day, and you don't have the cost of a credit card in between.
Even with the maximum compromise by the financial department, students are still worried.
Having the online payment option is a start. I think that can curb some of the use. But unfortunately, they went cold turkey on credit cards, and they don't know what the impact would be on that. So we would like to see a better mechanism where establish the online payment system, use that for the second term, see what that means for credit card use, and then from that, reevaluate after the second term. Because right now, students are entering exam periods. There's a lot of stress on their plate now. And not only do they have that, now they have to scramble to see how they're going to pay for second term. So it's more unneeded stress on students, and it's the worst time they could have put a policy like this in place.
With exams looming right around the corner, the stress is piling up for Brandon University students, and the last thing they need is to worry about these. From Westman Newsline with photographer Travis Burke, I'm Krista Taryn.
Stephen Harper and Indian officials have been discussing a proposal for civilian nuclear cooperation deal as the Prime Minister continues his visit to India today. It's a deeply sensitive bilateral issue because India used a Canadian-designed reactor to develop its arms program in the early 70s, despite officials' promises they wouldn't do so. But after a 2-decade chill in relations, Atomic Energy of Canada says there are no fundamental obstacles remaining on the nuclear co-op. Disarmament critics maintain any renewed civilian nuclear trade, by definition, will allow India to boost its nuclear arsenal. And that's all for news, but hang around, Jess is up next with Newsline Weather.